Good night, good evening, wherever you're down in. I appreciate you down there for another one of our series here for Numbers and Deuteronomy. We're looking at session 6, God's plan. Okay, now, if you remember the lessons before this, the children of Israelite, they were just messing up left and right, right? They were always complaining. They did not want to go into the promised land. They were scared. Their fear outweighed the promised land and the land of milk and honey, the gift that God was ready to give to them. That the fear overrode all that, right? So then they're out in the desert, and God said, you know what? You're going to stay out here for 40 years. And as you're out here, we're going to develop, and you guys are going to learn to trust me. And with the new generation, we're going to move forward. So that's what's been going on. So now we're moving into God's plan. We're going to be talking about this character, Balaam. Okay. I did make a video in regards to Balaam, that's separate from this, but of course we're going to go into depth in regards to this particular situation with Balaam. So basically what's going on is Balak, the king of Moab, is looking over his borders, and he's seeing that the Israelite community in the other valley are gathering together. They're getting bigger. He doesn't like what he sees. He also knows that these new neighbors of mine, these Israelites, they worship this one God, Yahweh. And they're not like us. They don't worship idols, and they don't worship the nature and the stars, the moon, whatever. They worship one God. That's weird, right? So Balak wants to bring in this prophet who is a prophet of God. He says he is from Mesopotamia, and he wants to bring him in. He wants him to curse those people in that valley. He wants them to curse the Israelites so they don't come into my valley. They don't come into my borders. I think Balak didn't want a war because their people were probably stronger and more intimidating than his people. Plus, the Israelites started having a reputation in regards to them being blessed, and Yahweh, this God, is very powerful. So, Balak's thinking, well, why don't I just get, Balaam, who is a prophet of God, to come in and curse these people, right? So curse them and drive them away, shoo them away, so I won't have to fight them, So that's where we are. And of course, we'll get into why, that didn't happen. But for the most part, the delegation went to Balaam, and they say, hey, can you do this for Balak? And of course, Balaam asked God, hey, can we curse your people? And God said no. And of course, Balaam tells the delegation, sorry, guys, can't do anything. So Balak comes back with a bigger contingency, a bigger group of people, and a much more substantial reward. Okay, and they said, look, we want you to curse the children of God. And Balaam is saying, God, these guys come back and they got heavy purses, and they got a lot of money that I really, really want. And it could really do me good. Yeah, I got wealth. I'm pretty good, but I can always use more. Can I please curse your people? It won't mean much of anything. It's not a big deal. Let me get the money. And God said, no, but you can go with these people if you want, but just remember to say what I tell you to say. That's key. So God is talking to this individual, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, why is God talking to a wicked prophet? Well, he is a prophet. Okay, and he is a false prophet, and so it kind of the lesson's greater than the situation that we have here present. And that's the best thing about the Bible is these situations that we see people in are maybe simple situations that they're in at the time, but they magnify through history and through time for us to learn some timeless lessons. And that's what we're going to get into today. So anyway, we're going to get into this. So first question, when have you been skeptical about someone's claim to speak for God? All the time. Every time someone says they're speaking on behalf of God, I am skeptical. I just am. Okay? I have a discerning heart. First thing I do is I hold up my Bible and I listen to what they say. If it does not match what God is saying, they are not of God. Okay? We start at the cross and go from there. If you're going to tell me that there's an exception to Christ, you're wrong. We're done. Okay? Because Christ covers all sin. There's no other way to get to heaven but through Christ. We start there and we work our way forward. So anybody that comes to me and says, yeah, I speak on behalf of God, you better have your story straight. That's all I got to say, because it's going to be very clear very soon if you don't. That's my opinion. Okay, you may have a different opinion. Who knows? So we're going to get right into this and get started. So we're looking at Numbers chapter 22-27, and this is obstacles met. So now remember, Balaam is with the Moabite contingents and his servants, and they're heading on down to meet King Balak, right? But God was incensed that Balaam was going, and the angel of the Lord took his stand on the path to oppose him. Balaam was riding his donkey, and his two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing on the path with a drawn sword in his hand, he turned off the path and went into the field. So Balaam hit her to return her to the path. Then the angel of the Lord stood in the narrow passageway between the vineyards with a stone wall on either side. The donkey saw the angel of the Lord and pressed herself against the wall, squeezing Balaam's foot against it. So he hit her once again. Wow. The angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn to the right or the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she crouched down under Balaam. So he became furious and beat the donkey with a stick. All right, so we have this prophet who's got this reputation of being a prophet of God, very self-esteemed. He's got a big reputation. He's got a house down by the river in Mesopotamia. He's got servants. So he's a man of means. He can't control a donkey. So he's beating his own donkey. And he's just frustrated. so that's where we are with this. He's livid. He's mad. And I wouldn't be surprised if he broke his stick and he had to go get another one. I don't know, but he just mad. For some reason, his donkey is giving him problems. And his servants are probably looking at each other like, what's going on here? And now the Moabite contingent, they didn't say that they're there, but I'm pretty sure they're somewhere along the road. They may have turned around and saw that and said, what's going on? So needless to say, Balaam he's mad mainly because he's embarrassed. Let's just say that. I think he's very embarrassed, and he is really taking it out on this donkey. And there's no reason. Well, there is a reason for it, but he doesn't know what it is. But the poor donkey, she's just taking a beating, right? So look at some of the notes. Many interpreters believe God was angry because Balaam had asked him a second time if he should go. Others suggest Balaam turned an unauthorized oracle after God told him to go. Whatever the case, the unidentified angel of the Lord, God's personal messenger, intercepted Balaam as he traveled. Yeah, I personally think that, when this whole episode to me speaks, and this is my opinion, I believe this whole episode is God showing Balaam who's in charge. Okay? That to me, that's what this is all about. He knows, in Balaam's heart, as we know and we will see throughout this story, in Numbers 22, chapters 22-24, Balaam is all about his money. He's all about his personal reputation. He is all about his sin. He's all about his excess. He's all about his greed. And God knows that when he's dealing with him. Nonetheless, God's glory will shine. And he will use this broken man for his glory and for his namesake. Okay? But at the same time, he's going to show Balaam, look, you're not as smart as you think you are. And we'll explain as we get into this. Other thing to look at, crouch down under Balaam. Here is used in the literal sense Balaam's donkey laid on the ground. She had nowhere to go. She couldn't back up because he was hitting her. It couldn't go forward. The angel was in the way. Couldn't go left or right. Just flopped down, right? I don't blame the donkey. You get beat up, you might as well. If you just stand there, he's just going to hit you. At least if she fell down on the ground, he'd have to get off. Just poor donkey. So here it is used in a literal sense, as we know, and he's furious. He's beating the donkey. But as you know, we'll see that Balaam's the one that's going to need correction, not the donkey. So anyway, all right. So ask, why do you think God lets us set out on a path, knowing it's going to change along the way? That's a good question. Why does God let us go along paths that don't necessarily lead to His glory, don't necessarily lead to our blessing, our well-being? I can only say that we should learn from those lessons, right? I remember, and what comes to mind right now is we had a situation where we at the church, we had when we were looking for a pastor some years back. We had in our mind what we wanted for our church. We thought, man, we're going to get this person, we're going to bring him in, and we're going to have a great time. We're going to do the work of the Lord. And we went into all these meetings and interviews with these pastors with that in mind. And God let us do that. However, God had someone better in mind that we didn't think to look at. Eventually, that resume came to the surface, and I just never could throw it away. It was just one of those that I just kept throwing, on a maybe pile. And eventually, we brought this person in, and the rest is history. And I was so blessed to go through that experience, and I love that God showed us that, we were still praying to God. We were asking for His leadership. We were just doing what we can to do God's will. And even though we had in our minds what we wanted, God said, okay, but I know what you want, but I'm going to show you what you need. And in that case, it was a blessing to be wrong. And I really think that when you go on a path, whatever that path may be, and God turns around and changes that path for your good, which it will always be for your good and His glory, please learn from it and realize that He's doing this for your sake, for your health and your benefit, because He loves you. And just look at that blessing, accept that blessing. All right, moving on. Second part, attention gain, chapter 22, 28, 31. Then the Lord opened up the donkey's mouth. Wow. So now we're getting into it. And she asked Balaam, the donkey asked Balaam, what have I done that made you beat me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, you made me look like a fool. If I had a sword in my hand, I'd kill you now. But the donkey said, am I not the donkey ridden all your life until today? Have I ever treated you this way before? No, he replied. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the path with a drawn sword in his hand. Balaam knelt down and bowed in worship on his face. All right. The thing that jumps out to me is something you probably haven't bothered to think about, which is Balaam is so insistent, enraged, and mad at the donkey. I don't think he becomes aware that he's actually talking to a donkey. So he doesn't pause. He's not astonished. He's not surprised. He was probably raising that stick, going to beat the donkey again. And then the donkey's talking. He just goes straight into why he's beating him. He's not surprised. He doesn't stop. He doesn't think. Oh, wait a minute, I'm talking to an animal. So, that's just how mad he is. This is how crazy this situation is. He is so upset that he's talking to a donkey, and I don't think the servants can hear the donkey. It doesn't say that they do. The donkey's probably just baying, and here he is talking to the donkey like he's having a conversation. So ain't no telling what the servant's story is. They're probably thinking, man, this guy's been out in the heat too long. So, but anyway, and look at the donkey. The donkey's been with Balaam his whole life. So he knows this donkey in and out, right? And there's no telling how many years he has ridden this donkey. This donkey knows his master, and the master knows his donkey. But for some reason, this donkey decides to not obey on this road. And instead of him wondering what is going on, instead of him, and again, him being a prophet of God, he should have at least sensed something supernatural, I would think, but he didn't. Again, because he is so caught up in his own self-worth that he does not recognize the road that he's on. That's pretty much what I'm thinking. So anyway, so we look at this, look at some of these notes. Apparently he stopped beating. He had, he never bothered to think that he was having words with a donkey. So again, you got to think, what did the Moabite contingent, what were they thinking, seeing this going on? The servants were probably shaking their heads and say, our master has lost it. He's done crazy now. Here he's beating the donkey. Now he's talking to the donkey. So there's no telling. With God's help, he was about to discover that the donkey, saw and understood the situation much more better than he did. The omnipotent God, who can allow donkeys to talk, can also remove the blinders and let wayward prophets see things from his perspective. Yes. So I think, in my opinion, this is the lesson. God is trying to show Balaam that, I'm in charge. And you think you know something, but this donkey knows more than you do. And you are so wrapped up in your own self, your own selfishness, you don't recognize what's going on around you. This should have been a humiliating lesson for Balaam. And it becomes that way. Once he notices, look what happens. Once he sees, it doesn't occur to him that he's talking to a donkey again. That, for some reason, that doesn't startle him. But when and that's how far into his selfishness that he is. And in his anger, he's not aware of the fact he's talking to a donkey. So God opens up his eyes to the angel. Then God gets his attention. And then he falls face down and worshiped on his face. Well, wow, okay. So that just goes to show you how stubborn we can be, that we don't see God working our lives sometimes. And if we're not careful, we're going to miss the message that God has given us. We got to be careful of that, right? So, all right, question. When has an unusual experience led you to seek God more intently? Wow, that's a good question, and this will be good for your Sunday morning. Try to talk about that. When was an unusual experience led you to seek God more intently? Well, matters of the church for the most part, being a deacon, there are some issues that do come up that they're very important. Sometimes they're personal matters with church members and stuff like that, with our ministers. And I've learned not to take any of those matters lightly. And during those times, I do seek God's presence and decision diligently. And I seek it not only among my fellow deacons, but I seek it among God himself. I pray to God and I bring it to God. And I intentionally pray for guidance and wisdom and a heart to help in those situations. You may have something different. It may have something to do with a family. It may have something to do with a friend. It may have something to do with your job. Who knows? But yeah, this would be a good question to talk about come Sunday morning, in my opinion. So, all right, let's wrap up. Now we're looking at God's plan. Numbers 22, 32, 35. The angel of the Lord asked him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? Look, I came out to oppose you because I consider what you are doing to be evil. The donkey saw me and turned away from these things 3 times. If she had not turned away from me, I would have killed you by now and let her live." Wow. Yeah. Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned. I did not know that you were standing in the middle of the path to confront me. And now, if it is evil in your sight, I will go back." Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but you are to say only what I tell you." So Balaam went with Balak's officials. Okay, so what's going on here? Okay, so all right, so again, he's so intent on himself. He's so selfish. He's got blinders on that God's trying to speak to him. He is reminding Balaam who's in control. And Balaam's not listening. And the donkey is. So that is sort of some humility. You got a beast of burden that knows more about the authority of God than you do. And the animal is saving your life by refusing to go forward. How many times has God done that? God has reached out and blocked us and stopped us from making a decision, and we are still going forward with it. We're so intent on our own selfish desires that we don't listen to God, even though we pray to God for his guidance. Sometimes we got it in our minds. We already got it made up. This is what we're going to do. Hopefully God will agree with it instead of asking God first. So sometimes we can be the donkey. Sometimes we are the prophet sitting on the donkey's back, right? Anyway, so looking at some of these notes here, again, she was more perceptive of God's work than the so-called prophet, meaning the donkey, okay? So standing in the path, this suggests that he believed he acted in ignorance. Balaam, I believe, thought he was acting in ignorance, which I'm not buying that argument myself. Nevertheless, the angel's accusation implied that Balaam should have recognized God's presence earlier in the situation. Yes, he should have recognized. This encounter helped him realize the magnitude of his disobedience. In response, he offered to make a situation right and not go to Moab. And his eyes finally opened to the reality of the situation. He had failed to heed God's instructions for the first time. The first time, he would not do so again. Now the Lord had gotten Balaam's attention. He would use him to glorify himself. Yes, I think that that's the case. Now, Balaam's he's like, okay, I'll turn around and go home. Well, God probably knew, of course, I'm not speaking for God, but I'm just thinking, knowing Balaam's character by now, that if he went home, he would just ask for Balak to pay him from afar, and he would try to find some way to curse the children of God from Mesopotamia. The goal for Balaam is the gold. He wanted the money, right? He would either try to do everything he can from afar, or he would do it in the presence of Balak, the king of Moab, right? But no, God said, you know what? I don't want you turning around and going home and doing something stupid from home. I want you to go forward because you're going to glorify me 3 times. And we will see that later on. We'll see where 3 times the king, Balak, the king of Moab, would take him to the high place. And 3 times he would take him to a high place. And 3 times they would offer, Balaam would offer sacrifices, and God would speak to him, and it would be blessings for the children of Israel and not the curse that Balak wanted. Balak eventually gets upset. 3rd time, he said, look, if this is what you want to do, I'm not paying you anything. Go home, leave me alone, right? And that's what's happened. But, Balak still wants his money. So later on, Balak realizes instead of going to God to curse his children, Balak said, hey, we can go through a back door and we can curse his children by going to them through sin, through idolatry and fornication. And that's what happens. And that's, like I said, that's for another story. But anyway, so what we're looking at here is God is in control, and he's trying to show this prophet who's in control, and the man's just being stubborn. He's beating his donkey, and the donkey knows better than he does. So, all right, last question. What benefits or outcomes can we anticipate when we seek to follow God's plans? Well, if we seek to follow God's plans and we do so accordingly, we will be blessed beyond measure. I truly believe that. The times that I knew that I worked closely aligned with God's plans for this church and my life, I felt like a leaf flowing on a river. And what I mean by that is everything fell into place. Everything was at peace. I had a presence in me, through me, and it was just wonderful. And those times where you have something important that you can give to God and it's His will, man, it's going to be awesome. And I pray that you recognize that in the moments that you're in God's presence and you're working and dealing with His purpose. When that happens, man, it's really, really awesome. All right, so here we go. Summarize. Believers must recognize that obstacles may arise as we are following God's plans. Yes, those obstacles do happen. Nevertheless, the plan will keep moving forward. Believers must remain sensitive to God's leading, being intentional to seek Him regularly. Yes, you just don't seek Him one time and say, I got it from here. Let God lead the whole way. If He made the path before you, just follow in His footsteps. It's the best thing we can do. And third, we should be willing to surrender our plans so we can follow God's plans. Yes, we follow our ways, it leads to destruction. A lot of times we make a mess of things, do we not? But God, if we trust God who will turn around and have His good for us, and we trust Him, we're not going to fail. God, we got to lean into God to trust Him, and He will take care of us. We just got to have the common sense to do that. We have got to trust Him. That's the biggest thing. And when He moves us forward, He can do great things with us in our lives. Okay? Thank you for watching. I appreciate you dialing in for another one of our series. This was really good in regards to this Balaam character. I did make a separate video on this character if you want to check it out. Just Google the people of the Bible, search the channel People of the Bible, and Balaam will be there. I'll try to leave the link of the video in the comments of this video here. And we'd love to have you here at Webb Baptist. If you would come down, that'd be great. We'd have you here on Wednesdays when we have our dinners. We have our dinners, I think, around 5:45, 6 o'clock, and we have Bible study after that. We have a place for every age of person here, your kids, grandkids, you. Come on down. We'd love to have you here on Wednesday nights to have food and fellowship. Sunday mornings, we meet here for our Sunday school lessons, connect groups, and then afterwards, we go into the sanctuary for an hour of worship, and we'd love to have you here as our honored guest. If you can't make it to Webb Baptist, by all means, get plugged into a Bible-based church wherever you're at. If you don't find one, keep looking. They're out there, I promise you. We got one right here, right? Get plugged in and see what God has in store for you, what God has planned for you. Okay, I guarantee you're going to be blessed beyond measure when you find God's family. Okay, they will be a blessing to you, and believe it or not, you will be a blessing to them. You may be that missing piece that they've been searching for in their fellowship. I know that. I believe that. Okay, I've been a part of that. I've seen it happen. Anyway, just get plugged in wherever you're at and see what God has in store for you, either here or there. Doesn't matter. Okay? Until next time, take care. God bless.